Good afternoon. My name is Neil King. I'm the Secretary General of the International Association of University Presidents and the President of the Institute of Transpersonal Psychology in Palo Alto, California, USA. I have the honor of chairing this WISE debate. I'm going to briefly describe the topic and then introduce our distinguished panelists. And we have a very large topic in a very small amount of time, and so we will simply jump in. Our topic is Reforming Education, Mission Impossible. So we heard many of these issues foretold in the opening plenary, opening debate. We are looking at this time at the United Nations has indicated that it is this week that the global population has reached 7 billion with a larger and larger number of young people. That we are looking at huge demographic shifts from anything we've known historically, that we are looking at the predominance of the issue of access for girls and women to education at all levels, that we are looking at tensions and including financial and political at both the regional and the global level, and that we are looking for funding for education around the world as very important issues. So I will begin by asking the Minister the question of what reforms are needed and why is this a challenge? Why are we talking about this as a challenge today?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm really glad to be here, part of this panel about a very important topic relating to education reform. The title is Mission Impossible. Definitely, it is not impossible if, and here I'm talking about many ifs. Definitely there are, many reform programs that have been implemented for decades around the world, but the big question is always raising, whether these reform programs are really achieving their intended goals and targets or not. However, the international experience and lessons around the world would tell us directly that it varies from one country to another. And there is no one conclusion that we can conclude that there is one recipe for any education program around the world. So what makes it successful in some countries or another, in fact, is the context within reform program itself is placed within the overall economic and social development. So the approach of copy and paste and just by, borrowing models from different countries to other countries will not work definitely. So, we have to be careful. And here, I would like to say that, education reform is about change. And we know that change takes time and takes effort. And also we have to be patient, especially when it comes to education. I could summarize just very briefly, where the world stands in terms of education reform. Definitely it's lots of energy but little light. Everybody is talking about education reform. However, there is little light that would tell that it is working in different fronts. Definitely one of the lessons that we have learned is that piecemeal approach to education reform will not work. We need to be holistic, we need to be systemic approach in terms of reforming education. We have to be visionary. As educators, we are grappling again with many key questions regarding what are our students should learn and be able to do, and what type of preparation they need to be to prepare them for the future, which we are speeding up in an exponential manner. So definitely there are still many barriers to education reform and change, whether within the system of education itself or outside. It is possible, provided that we are talking about homegrown initiatives. We are talking about tailor-made approach to reform of education. We are talking about school-based improvement models rather than system-wide improvement strategies. We talk about new voice and a new boss for education in terms of that education systems have to be held accountable by parents, by students, and local communities, rather than just by officials and legislatives. So I think pressure and support is also a strategy that we have to adopt, but we have to provide definitely teachers with a lot of support. We have to provide them with incentives and support at the workplace, but definitely education in the world, around the world, is under deep criticism in terms not only of student performance, but also in terms the way we are preparing our students for the future. Are we preparing them to be good citizens and global citizens? And in fact, whether our education systems are preparing students to be active citizens and engaged learners. We have to definitely revise and adopt new strategies, not only for teaching. There are many challenges in terms of ICT, in terms of youth bulge, in terms of high rate of unemployment, in terms of gender parities around the world, and low participation of women in labor force. Definitely, I mean, again, the key for success is focus at the school level with wider decentralization, but also put education within its proper context, which is socio and economic development. Education reform is not a technical exercise. It is a political, and it is about advocacy and engagement. It is all about linkages and alignment. That's why it is, as it stands right now, mission impossible. I would like to conclude by saying definitely the mission impossible, because the current approach to education reform is focusing on engineering of inputs of education. And these are in no way would necessarily be translated to a change in the learning environment and in the learning process, so that we have to change the approach. If we continue with the same approach, focusing on inputs, teacher preparation, curricula development, and so forth, these are vital and important, but they are not the right intervention. The right intervention should come from the process level of education rather than from the input level. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. The next question is going to go to our colleague, Professor Gruder. I wonder if you could speak to a couple of different points that we spoke about earlier today. One is that the planet's population is serving beyond 7 billion people with dramatic demographic shifts and increases in young people. And the other is the aging of the international professoriate and the generational distance from digital natives, the implications of technology.
Thank you very much, Neil. It's nice to be here. And it's very difficult to compress our answers into such a short period of time. And you gave me some challenges with respect to demography and aging populations, or aging professoriate, as you called it. Well, I come from a country where, if not as drastic as other parts of the Middle East, we have a young population. And young population is, I think, will be an asset unless you educate them. If you educate them, and if you educate them properly, if you give them quality education. That's why I think education in these parts of the world are extremely important. And it's a very important policy matter on our agenda that we have to deal with. Now, when you come to the digital divide, you know, the importance of the new electronics for the education systems, a lot of us think that I have those in my country as well, if you just provide the technology to the students, buy tablets or computers, put on the table, you solve your problems. I think technology is an important part of education, but it's how do you use that technology? I mean, the students have to be educated on what goes into that machine and what comes out of there. So we have to think of the content. We have to think of how do we use that technology to educate our students. It's a great opportunity, but it should be turned into an opportunity by really studying the process and developing the proper procedures for it. About the aging professoriate, here, of course, I mean, if you're in the universities, you have this divide between the students and the older generation who is not very much in tune with the contemporary technology. Now, how do you bridge that gap? I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. Sometimes the youth, with their proficiency in technology, create or put enough pressure on the faculty to change. But in other places, I've seen a lot of resistance. I think this is something that time will take care of. And time moves on very quickly during these days. Maybe I should address some of the points you raised in your presentation, if I may, Neil. 2 minutes, okay. One of the things that I'd like to say is that I agree with a lot of the points you made, but we should really stress the uniqueness of education. I'm a political scientist. I look at the education from the political scientist point of view. And I think education is a very unique policy area which does not give itself to change very easily, to reform very easily. Why? Because education plays a very important part in the ideology of our nations. And the function of education in many instances become instilling an ideology, whatever that ideology may be, in different contexts. So it is very different. It's very, very difficult to really move the bureaucracies that grow around that nation building or that ideology instilling process. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, going to turn to our colleague from Pakistan, Dr. Hussain. And the question, again, a couple of parts. The need, some explanation, some discussion of the need to focus on educating girls and women, and then the increasingly close correlation between the level of education and the opportunity for meaningful employment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think there is now very comprehensive studies which have been taken all over the world, Africa, Latin America, Asia, which show that investment in female education has the highest rate of return. And it's not just the economic rate of return, but the social rate of return also is quite high, for the simple reason that if you are able to educate the woman, she has the collateral benefits spread over the entire family, which is better nutrition, better environment, better health care. So the human development aspects of investment in education, family spacing, for example, you've been talking about 7 billion people. The woman who is educated has a much better appreciation of the choices she can make about raising the family. And therefore, the enormous benefits, social and economic, which accompany the investment in female education has made this as the most attractive investment in all other competing demands. Why is it that some places it has done very well and other places it hasn't been very successful? There are a number of cultural, religious, and other political problems which retard this movement. So it is not that you have to be convincing people about the benefits of education, but it is about the decision makers who should be persuaded that this is the way they should go, despite the fact that there may be initial resistance. I mean, people talk about the tribal areas of Pakistan. A survey by Gallup just recently showed that the #1 demand of the people of that area is education for girls. So this is counterintuitive, that people feel that the remote you are and the more distant you are from the civilization, you may not be able to demand for these kind of services, but that's not true. So we should listen to the constituencies and advocacy on the part of the non-governmental organization, on the political parties, in order to persuade the decision makers to carry out the reforms. For example, we had female education enrollment rates in the primary go up by 20% by giving the incentive to the female household that she will be given a 200 rupees incentive payment if she sends her girl education. And it took off, and 20% enrollment, persisted. So there are ways and means whereby you can actually accomplish this goal. It is how you bring about the decision makers to this particular point. And the correlation between education and rates of employment is becoming even more close because of globalization, because of technology, because of mobility of factors of production, and the skill intensity of production process itself. Therefore, the more educated and the more skilled you are, the more employable you are, and you have demands across the borders, not only confined to your own borders.